full-time job, college degree, health insurance, the whole package, and you still can afford to move out of your parents' house, that sentence would have sounded insane in 1985. A bad joke in 2005. In 2026, it's the lived reality of the majority of an entire generation. Let that sink in before you keep watching. I want to say that again slowly. The majority, not a fringe case, not some cohort of people who made terrible decisions. This is the median experience for young workers right now. When most people can't clear a basic bar with a full-time job, that stops being a personal finance story entirely. When less than 30% of full-time young workers in major metro areas can afford a modest one-bedroom apartment, you're not looking at bad budgeting, you're looking at a systems problem. 7 out of 10 people doing everything right still can't clear the most basic housing bar on their own income. There's a guy working 40 hours a week as a project coordinator in the Southeast earning $55,000 a year. His rent is $2,200 a month. That's 32% of his gross income before taxes, before food, before student loans, before anything else. And he considers himself lucky he found something under $2,500. The median home price in Los Angeles is now roughly 12.5 times the median household income. In 1985, a home cost about 3.5 times annual income. The ladder didn't get taller, somebody removed most of the rungs, and nobody sent out a memo about it. So here's the question I want you to sit with. If you study, you work, you don't blow money on nonsense, and you still can't cover basic costs on a full-time salary, is that a personal failure? Or is it a system running in a direction that was never built for you? Think about it honestly. We're going to explain how the relationship between labor and cost of living broke down, why it's getting stranger over time, and what it means for your money decisions right now. This isn't a video about how hard life is. That framing is useless. What matters is understanding the mechanics so you can go around the wall instead of running into it. Here's the central metaphor. Think of the economy as a treadmill. For most of the 20th century, the belt moved at a speed you could handle. You worked, you kept pace. You didn't get rich overnight, but you didn't fall off either. You could afford rent, save a little, buy a house in your 30s. Your legs and the belt were calibrated together. Starting in the late 90s, and accelerating hard after 2008, somebody turned up the speed, but not for everyone equally. The belt got faster specifically for anyone whose income comes from labor. Anyone who has to show up, trade hours, collect a paycheck. That's most of you watching this right now. For people whose money works for them, owners of assets, property, capital, the belt actually slowed down. Asset prices went up, meaning the return came to them passively while they stood still. One group is sprinting just to stay in place. The other is standing on a platform that moves them forward for free. Let's stack the numbers. Over the past decade, urban rents climbed about 4% per year, while wages for full-time workers rose only 0.6% annually. That gap compounds every single year. It's not a bad month or a rough quarter, it's a structural drift that's been running for 10 straight years. Do the 10-year math. Someone making $50,000 in 2015 after a decade of 0.6% raises ends up around $53,000. Meanwhile, rent goes from $1,200 to roughly $1,750 a month. That's $550 extra every month, $6,600 a year, coming out of a paycheck that barely moved at all. Where does that extra money come from? Credit cards, a roommate, parents, or the decision to just never save. And that's only rent. The median US house price has risen about 90% in just 10 years, more than 6% a year, every single year, compounding on top of already high prices. Home buyers now need to earn $111,000 a year to afford the typical US home, about $25,000 above the median household income. Buying a home on a median salary isn't barely achievable with sacrifice, it's mathematically blocked under conventional financing. That's a different category of problem entirely. The median first-time US home buyer is now 38 years old, up from 31 about a decade ago. That's 7 years of life delay, 7 years of building zero equity, 7 years of rent enriching someone else instead of accumulating the biggest wealth driver previous generations accessed in their 20s. Just over a quarter of Gen Z owns their home, compared to more than half of millennials and over 70% of Gen Xers and boomers. That's not a small gap. That's a collapsing floor happening generation by generation, and it's accelerating rather than leveling off. In some high-cost coastal markets, fewer than 10% of Gen Z workers can afford a one-bedroom apartment. Take 10 people working full-time in those cities. Fewer than one can afford to live alone without being financially strained. Everyone else doubles up, moves home, or bleeds flexibility every month. Here's where most people get it wrong. The popular explanation for why Gen Z can't afford anything is they spend too much. You've heard the avocado toast argument. In a fancier version, it's subscriptions, eating out, not prioritizing savings. That explanation is comfortable. It's also mostly wrong. This isn't a story about young adults buying too much coffee. It's a story about a generation trying to build a life while basic survival keeps raising the cover charge. Blaming a 24-year-old's lunch choices is easier than explaining monetary policy, zoning law, and 30 years of political economy producing a housing crisis. Here's the actual mechanism. After 2008, the Federal Reserve injected enormous liquidity into the financial system. Interest rates dropped near zero and stayed there for years. When money is almost free to borrow, assets inflate. That's not a bug, that's a predictable consequence of cheap money hitting fixed supply assets. Who benefited? People who already owned assets. Homeowners watched property values double. Stock portfolios recovered and then some. The generation already in the game before 2008 saw net worth compound in ways that had almost nothing to do with how hard they personally worked. Who didn't benefit? Anyone still in school during 2008? Anyone who entered the workforce between 2010 and 2020? Anyone trying to get on the ladder while the ladder was being beat up by people already standing on it? Timing, not effort, decided who caught that wave. Add zoning to that. In most major cities, planning laws prevent developers from building enough housing to meet demand. Rezoning land requires mountains of paperwork, and neighbor objections can stall a development for years, restrict supply while making money cheap to borrow, and prices only move one direction. To be fair, wages went up too, right? On paper, yes. From January 2021 to July 2025, average hourly earnings rose 21.8%. But the consumer price index rose 22.7% over the same period, leaving real wages down 0.7% cumulatively. You earned more dollars worth less, and that's the charitable version of the story. That number doesn't even account for housing inflating far faster than overall prices or student debt entering the equation at a scale previous generations never faced. What employers pay for health insurance is hitting levels not seen in 20 years, and a big chunk of that gets absorbed by employees through suppressed salaries. Comedic aside, some financial advice online says just don't eat out for a year and put that money in an index fund. The average American spends about $800 a year eating out. At 7% annual return over 40 years, that's roughly $11,000. A median home in a major city runs over $400,000. Great, we just need 36 more plans exactly like it. If this is clicking for you, if you want to understand how these systems actually work instead of just feeling better about them, subscribe. I put out a video every week breaking down the mechanics, the incentives, the real math. No fluff, no hustle porn, just the system laid out clearly. Let's go a level deeper. Housing is expensive, and wages haven't kept up. That's the surface layer most people stop at. But there are two more forces pressing on this specific generation that barely get mentioned. The first is student debt, acting as an entry tax on professional life itself. Student debt isn't just a loan, it's a toll you pay to enter most white-collar careers. The average student loan payment lands around $400 a month. That's money that can't go to savings, can't go to a down payment fund, can't go into an index fund where you would compound during the exact decade compounding matters most. Your parents statistically did not carry that. In the 1980s and 90s, public university tuition in real terms was a fraction of what it is now. That's not an excuse. It's a documented structural difference with real dollar consequences showing up in every financial model you run today. The second force, an invisible volatility premium. Gen Z entered the workforce during or right after three major disruptions. The 2008 financial crisis, COVID in 2020 which wiped out entry-level jobs overnight, and the inflation spike from 2021 to 2023. Three massive resets in about 15 years. Resets are asymmetric. People with assets get protection. Property values recover. Equity markets recover. Governments backstop financial markets. People whose only asset is their labor absorb the hit directly through job losses, furloughs, and stalled careers they never fully get back. Bank of America's 2025 Gen Z study found 51% say cost of living is a barrier to financial success and 55% don't have enough savings to cover 3 months of expenses. That's not recklessness. When rent eats 40 to 50% of income, there's simply no mathematical room left to build a buffer. Here's the reversal to really sit with. Most people frame this as Gen Z doesn't earn enough. Wrong variable. The real problem is fixed costs, housing, healthcare, debt service have grown to absorb so much of any income that the part you actually control has shrunk to almost nothing. Let's make it concrete. Meet Marcus, 24, marketing analyst in a mid-sized metro like Atlanta or Denver. He earns $60,000 a year, a salary that used to mean something real. $60,000 divided by 12 is $5,000 a month before anything comes out. After taxes at roughly 22%, he takes home about $3,900 a month. His rent for a one-bedroom is $1,700. That's already 44% of his take-home pay, gone before the month even starts. He's rent-burdened before he's bought a single other thing. And remember, this is someone doing everything supposedly right. Added up, student loan payment $420. Car plus insurance $380. Because he needs it to commute. Health insurance $160. Groceries, utilities, phone conservatively $450. That's $2,510 in fixed obligations every single month with zero flexibility built into any of it. $3,900 minus $2,510 leaves him $1,390. Out of that comes gas, clothing, any social life, unexpected costs and savings. If he saves an optimistic 10% of what's left, that's $139 a month, $1,668 a year. That's the entire wealth building budget for a working adult with a real job. To put together a 20% down payment on a $350,000 median home, he needs $70,000. At his current savings rate with zero emergency, zero car repair, zero medical bills, that takes 42 years. He'd be 66 years old getting a down payment right around retirement age. Is Marcus irresponsible? No. He's not flying to Vegas every month. He's not buying clothes he doesn't need. He's a functional adult with a job doing exactly what he was told to do. The treadmill runs faster than his legs, not because he's slow, but because the belt speed was set by forces that have nothing to do with his effort. Now the uncomfortable part, because everything so far is a symptom, the cause is deeper. In the United States, income from labor is taxed at a higher rate than income from capital. Earn $100,000 from work, you can pay close to 40% federal plus payroll taxes. That gap is the real engine behind this whole story. Own an asset that appreciates $100,000 and hold it over a year. You pay 15 to 20%, roughly half. That differential didn't appear by accident. It reflects a deliberate choice about which economic activity gets rewarded. The tax code encourages owning things and penalizes doing things. Here's the part that stings most. Compounding rewards time in the market above almost everything else. Money invested at 22 has close to 40 years to snowball. Money invested at 38 has maybe 25. That gap isn't a rounding error, it's the difference between a comfortable retirement and grinding into your 70s, and it's baked in the moment your asset entry gets delayed by a decade. Now zoom out to the biggest number in this entire video. Roughly $84 trillion is moving from baby boomers to their children over the next 20 years. That's the largest handoff of wealth in recorded history, dwarfing anything from prior generational shifts. It's about to reshape who owns what in this country, and it is already quietly happening in the background of every headline about Gen Z struggling. But that money doesn't fall evenly like rain. It flows to whoever already has parents with property, businesses, or portfolios to pass down. Which means inside this one generation you get two totally different stories running in parallel. One group gets handed a head start, the other builds from zero on a belt that's already sprinting. Same age, same degree, wildly different starting line. Here's the darkest piece of the machine. The people with the political power to fix housing costs or rebalance the tax code are largely the same people whose net worth grows every year the current setup holds. so there's no strong internal push to change it. Not a conspiracy, just incentives quietly pointing away from reform and toward protecting what's already been won. Second comedic detour, because we need it. Financial independence by 30, they said, just cut the lattes. So I ran it. One $4 coffee skip daily saves you $14.60 a year. Median down payment in my city, 70 grand. At that pace, I hit the goal in 48 years. I'll be 72, holding a reverse mortgage on a house I never bought. Bold strategy, truly. So let's get practical. I've got a framework, 3 mental traps that keep smart, hard-working people stuck on this fast-moving belt without ever noticing there's an exit. Once you can name these traps, you can spot yourself falling into one in real time, and that alone changes how you make decisions with your money and your time going forward. Trap 1. The effort trap. You were raised believing work harder equals earn more equals afford more, and that used to roughly hold. It's broken now at the entry level because the cost floor is rising faster than any ceiling on your effort. You can max out 60-hour weeks and still not close a gap that isn't personal, it's structural. More hours on the same machine doesn't change categories. Trap 2. The patience trap. Some people know the system's slow, so they decide to just wait it out, figure out investing later, buy a house when rates drop. Patience sounds wise, but passive patience is just delay wearing a strategy costume. Compounding does not care about your intention to eventually start. Every year you sit out is a year of growth you can never get back. Trap 3. The consumption trap, and this one's cruel. When people feel financially stuck with no clear path forward, they spend more, not less, chasing small moments of relief. That subscription, that delivery order at midnight. Spending becomes a coping mechanism for the stress the system creates, which then deepens the exact stress that triggered it. The belt speeds up, and every break from it costs money. So let's recap the machine we just built. Urban rents climbing roughly 4% a year against wage growth of 0.6%. A tax code that rewards owning assets and penalizes trading hours for dollars. A student debt entry fee prior generations never paid at this scale. And monetary policy that inflated the net worth of anyone already holding property before you even graduated. That's the treadmill, fully assembled. Takeaway 1. Convert labor income into assets earlier than feels comfortable, even in embarrassingly small amounts. 15,000 invested at 22 beats 50,000 invested at 35, because compounding math favors early entry violently. An index fund, a sliver of real estate, anything that moves a dollar from the labor column to the asset column sooner than the average person does it. Takeaway 2. Build one income stream that doesn't scale one-to-one with your hours. If every dollar you earn requires you physically showing up, you're permanently stuck at the belt speed. A side channel, a small business, digital products, a newsletter, none of it is passive fantasy money. It takes real upfront work, but the structure compounds in a direction a paycheck never can. Takeaway 3. Stop chasing salary alone and start chasing ownership stakes wherever you can find them, because a $60,000 equity position and a $60,000 salary are not the same 10 years out. One dies the day you stop showing up, the other keeps growing without you. That's the whole game, fellas. If this helped you see the machine clearer, subscribe, drop a comment with what you'd add, and keep building. Your 30s will thank you.